Today on The Pulse, what is the legal term for stealing a business idea, and how do you protect your idea? Also, how to put together the dream team for your business. All of this and more coming up next. It's Economic Development Week in Prince George's County. The only show in town dedicated to helping Prince George's County businesses. Hello, I'm Denise Roberts, and welcome to The Pulse, the show dedicated to helping Prince George's County businesses. Have you ever had an idea but afraid to share it for fear that someone might steal it? For many businesses, intellectual property protects more than just an idea or a concept. It protects genuine business assets that may be integral to the core services of your business and overall long-term viability. Here to talk about intellectual property and how to protect it is Andrea Evans of the law firm of Andrea Hintz Evans, LLC. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So can you tell us a little bit about what you do as an intellectual property attorney?
Sure. So I'm proud to say that I launched my law firm 10 years ago, and we provide patent, trademark, and copyright legal services.
Okay. All right. You know, intellectual property is not a common topic that I hear about for businesses. Can you tell us what it is?
Sure. So intellectual property is divided into three types: patents, trademarks, and copyrights.
Okay.
So simply put, you would patent an invention, trademark the name of that invention, and copyright all of your written materials.
Okay. So how does that work?
Well, you know, that's the million-dollar question that everybody has. Most people don't even understand what it is.
Right.
So the key that I want your audience to know is that every business has some type of intellectual property. Okay. So let's start with patents, for instance. So again, patents protect inventions, but do you really have an invention is the million-dollar question. So what we would do at my firm is sit down, have a consultation, and most importantly, conduct a search.
Okay.
Because in order for you to have something patentable, three things need to happen. The invention needs to be useful and solve a problem. The invention needs to be novel or new, and the invention needs to be non-obvious. So those are the three things that need to happen. And just kind of on your own, Denise, people can go to the internet and research Google patents or go to the United States Patent Office website and research inventions. But that's patents in a nutshell.
Okay. So can you give me an example of something that could be patent?
Well, you can patent, for instance, a television, and then you would trademark the brand name of that television, say Sony, for example, and you would copyright the script, like a television script show. So that's an easy way to think about it and keep it separate, because the worst thing you can do is contact a law firm and use the terms improperly. Okay. Because that means you don't know what you're talking about. So at least you want to be able to identify what type of intellectual property you have.
Okay. And what's at stake when it comes to intellectual property?
Oh, well, there is so much that's at stake, and that's a great question, because whatever you can do with real property, you can do with intellectual property. So just like whatever you can do with your home, you can do with a patent, trademark, or copyright. So you can license it, you can assign it, you can sell it, you can will it, and it's extremely valuable. So I hope that none of your viewers out there are hiding their inventions under their bed or mailing themselves their scripts, because that's why we have these avenues and this type of law to protect it.
Okay. Why is this information important for businesses? I mean,
it's extremely important because often people don't know to protect their intellectual property until it's too late. Okay. And so what I like to tell my clients is it's better to be proactive than reactive. Okay. It's going to cost you more to fight and get your name back, for instance, with a trademark, for example, than it would have been if you would have just protected it in the first place. And then when we think of patents, it's actually the first to file a patent application. Okay. So you want to get this application filed. So I can't tell you how many people watch television late at night, they see those commercials and say, oh, that was really my invention. But the key is you don't have any rights until you start that process. So it's good to sit down with an attorney like myself and understand your options fully.
Okay. So I just want to be clear. So a patent is for an invention, which is an idea. You don't trademark the idea, you trademark the name.
Right.
Okay. And then copyright, you copyright words.
Well, you copyright written, so it's a fine line between trademarks and copyright, so let's talk about that. Yeah. So when we think of trademarks, a good example may be Nike, for instance. So Nike's trademarked the words Nike, they've trademarked the symbol, the swoosh symbol, and then their slogan, just do it. So those are 3 examples of trademarks. Now, other things can be protected by a trademark. So most people don't realize you can trademark hashtags, you can trademark sounds, you can trademark scents. So the key with trademarks is anything that people identify your business with is what you can trademark. But that's not to be confused with your favorite word, right? So many people call and say, I love the word Evans IP Law, but it has to be tied to a physical product or a service. So you're either intending to use that name for a product or a service, or you're actually using it for a product or a service.
Okay, okay. How difficult is it to protect your intellectual property?
Well, of course, you need to contact a qualified attorney. Now, everything is optional, so you have the option to contact an attorney, or you have the option to represent yourself, is what we call pro se. But it's not encouraged or recommended to do that because you can make mistakes that can jeopardize your rights. And so, for instance, with patents, it seems like a difficult process because it's technical. And so to be a patent attorney like myself, you actually have to have an engineering degree first and then go to law school. So it's a very specialized niche practice, and it's a reason that you need to consult with someone like myself because we understand the technical terms, and the invention really does need to be more than an idea. It has to be written in a way that someone can actually make or use the invention. So if you're not in a situation where you can make your invention or code your app, you want to sit down with the patent attorney to first figure out if you really have something that can even be protected. And then with the trademark, it's not that this process is difficult, it's just you want to ensure that the name is not out there. So you want to make sure it's not going to be likely to cause confusion with something else. So if someone already has a name that you want, you want to sit down with an attorney to make sure they're not going to sue you for violating their trademark. And then with copyrights, unlike patents and trademarks, they're not actually examined in terms of searching to see if something is similar to it. The process is more of looking at the application to make sure that you filed it correctly.
So even if someone has trademarked a name, someone else can still use the name?
Well, actually they can't. People can, but they're not supposed to. So the key is, what I'm referring to today is what we call a federal trademark. So that's protected by the United States Patent and Trademark Office. But you and I know there are a lot of people watching today that don't have trademarks, and there are a lot of misconceptions where they assume if they own a domain name that they own the trademark, or if they launch the business or registered in a state they own it. But actually protecting it federally allows you to enforce it against others. And so you can then go and enforce your rights against them if you need to. So I would highly recommend that someone sit down and have a proper search conducted with a trademark attorney.
So what's the first step in getting your invention patented or your name trademarked?
Well, let's talk about the invention process first, because they are 2 totally separate different processes. Both are protected at the United States Patent and Trademark Office. So what I recommend on your own is, if you think you have an invention, I would probably start with free resources. So you can go to google.com/patents and just play around with keyword searches to search your invention. And then that way, before you schedule your consultation, you have some documents to bring to the consultation. So that'll be very helpful. But for me, having worked at the Patent and Trademark Office, what's unique about my skill set is I actually worked as a patent examiner and a trademark examining attorney before I launched my law firm. So I know that the search is critical. So you want to know if you have something patentable. And so what we would do is we start with different stages. So first, do we understand what the invention is? Do you have more than just an idea? So you may have an idea that you want to be able to see me while I talk to you on the telephone. That's an idea, but the invention will be a device with a screen and a button, so you need to be able to describe it so someone can make or use it. But once you explain the invention to me, then we conduct a search to determine if it's patentable, and then from there are different types of patent applications you can file. So we need to figure out, are you filing a design application just for the look of the invention, or if you're filing more of a utility application that's going to cover the features of the invention. Now with trademarks are a little more self-explanatory because we're all experts because we're consumers. So I know everybody shops, everybody can go to the store and see a name and then ask themselves, are they confused?
Okay.
The key is what we call a likelihood of confusion. So it doesn't have to be actual confusion for it to be a problem, just a likelihood of confusion. So what I mean by that is, does it sound the same? Does it look the same?
Okay.
Did you make it plural or did you just change the spelling? Do they have the same meaning? So during a consultation, again, we would conduct a search.
Okay.
So everything starts with a search and helping to determine if you really have something that can be protected.
Okay, we got to stop right there. Andrea Evans, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and giving us some really valuable information for our small businesses.
Thank you.
Up next, how to hire the right people for your business when we come back.
Can we get strawberries? Okay.
Welcome back to The Pulse. No matter how great of a manager or business owner you are, if you've got some holes, or should I say bad apples, on your team, you could be headed for big and costly trouble. Our next guest is Berri Wells, president of Turning Point Solutions and founder of Coach's Corner. Welcome to the show, Berri.
Thank you, Denise. It's great to be here.
So tell us a little bit about Turning Point Solutions.
So Turning Point Solutions is my entrepreneurial effort that I started back in 1991. It's amazing to me to have been in business that long. And primarily what we do is we assist business owners, entrepreneurs, decision makers with communicating and connecting better. And we do that through a three-pronged approach, including training, coaching, and we use an assessment that gives us a baseline in terms of the person's personality, their communication skills, and then we integrate all of those pieces together to come up with a package and a solution that's going to address their needs.
Okay, all right. Well, that was a nice little introduction. So we're here to talk about how to hire the right person, right? And human capital is one of the most important investments you can make in your company, right?
Absolutely.
So why is it important for businesses to learn how to hire the right people?
Well, because just like you said, when we don't hire the right people, it costs us on every front. But I think a part of hiring right has a lot to do with in terms of people not having the tools or knowing about tools that they can use. So we certainly would not hire someone without looking at their LinkedIn profile or their resume or their cover letter. Well, in addition to that, business owners who are making hiring decisions also need information in addition to the technical skills, but in terms of the person's personality, how they communicate, how they come across, and that's where those assessments come into place, so that without the assessment, I think that the decision maker, he only or she only has half of the story. But when you include that assessment piece, I know about you technically by way of your LinkedIn profile and resume, and then I know about you kind of behaviorally and how you respond in conflict through the assessment. So by coming together with those two, then you have a winning combination.
Okay, so what are some of those tools that you use to determine those kinds of things?
Sure. So primarily it's the DISC assessment, D-I-S-C, and each of those four letters represents a style. And the idea is each of the styles brings strengths to the table and each of the styles brings limitations to the tables, and to the extent that you and I can figure out, moving beyond the fact that, oh, they're not like me in terms of the style, but what do they bring to the table? So you and I are similar. I think we're both I and D.
Yes.
So outgoing, fun, loving, creative, yes. Do we need that? Yes. But do we need the entire team to be eyes? No. We need some people who are thoughtful, careful, meticulous. So the idea is we each bring something to the table that the other doesn't have. And then that is what creates actually the dream team.
Okay. So I guess I just want to, what's more important? Is it the skill set, or is it fitting in? Because that's what it sounds, your personality is about fitting in. Which one is more important?
So how about this? When you are not fitting in, which one is more important? Because I can hire an accountant, an engineer, an attorney all day long.
Right.
What I need is an accountant, an engineering, and attorney with whom I can what? Relate. So that relation piece, however, comes from me understanding if your style is D, I, S, or C, or whatever it is, that I can still connect with you, get out what I want from you, because I understand in terms of what motivates you, what encourages you, then I speak to you in that language.
But it seems like, at the end of the day, business owners just want to make sure that they're making money, okay? So the bottom line, I would think, is that I just want to make sure you can do the job, do the work.
Well, if we work in a situation in a silo and I never have to talk with you, I don't have to interact with vendors, I don't have to interact with the chairman of the board, and I am just in my little bitty cave, perhaps. But because we are communicating and interacting and sharing ideas and concepts, the way that you get along and to the extent and how you connect with people is just as critical as your technical skills.
So how do I know when I'm hiring the right person?
So, right, air quotes, right. So there are a couple of ways. One, I like to look at it this way. A business owner should take stock and have an idea of who's on the team, so that when he or she is hiring, and then they want to be mindful of who they have and then the skill gaps that they need to fill, yes, as well as who they have and the environment and culture they're trying to create. So if I'm the business owner and I'm hiring and I say, oh, all of my people are I's, or all of them are S's or D's, and here you come for the interview, if you are not already like us, that's a compliment. So hiring the right person is not about so much trying to necessarily exclude people because of their style, but being able to understand, appreciate, and capitalize on what they bring to the table.
Okay. What determines the culture in the workplace?
So it's these individual widgets called people who then comprise the overall organization and the culture and the tempo. So in working with business owners from a coaching and training perspective, what we do as an organization is to come in and assess that through the assessment that is both valid and reliable, and then give feedback in terms of this is what your culture is, these are some potential problems you all may experience, and then these are areas where you're going to excel. So it's a way to kind of help the business owner take stock in a technical way as well as a cultural way, because remember, people quit people. When I decide to leave, usually it's because I have a conflict or there's something that is not happening in terms of a relationship or rapport. So if we can fix those and prevent those from happening in the first place, we have a greater opportunity to retain the employee as opposed to having that revolving door.
Okay. Very well. I want to thank you so much for coming on. I wish we had more time, but we got to go on to the next segment. But I want to thank you so much, and hopefully you'll be able to come back on and talk some more.
I would love to do that. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Don't go away, because trust me, you don't want to miss what's next.
Don't wait. Communicate. Make your emergency plan today.
Welcome back to The Pulse. As a small business owner, Tax season can be one of the most challenging and frustrating times of the year. Between joining the gig economy, starting or running a business, and working on building your client base, tax season can seem like the unwelcome guest at the party. Listen, I know taxes is the last thing you want to be talking about, but what I don't want is for you, the small business owner, to have to wait to the last minute to deal with it. So here to tell you what you can start doing between now and tax season is Brian Smith, Chief Financial Officer and CPA from the Prince George's County Economic Development Corporation. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So please tell us, what are some of the biggest tax mistakes small business owners make when they're doing their taxes?
Well, some of the biggest mistakes early on would be choosing the proper entity. For tax purposes, a lot of small businesses and owners don't realize the entity can have an impact on their taxes.
What do you mean by entity?
So you can be a sole proprietor if you're starting out. You can be a partnership if you have a partner. You can be an LLC, which is a limited liability company. You can be a regular corporation or an S corporation. Each of those has its own tax advantages and disadvantages. So before you make that choice, you should talk to perhaps an attorney about some of the legal side of it, but you should also talk to a tax accountant about what tax advantages and disadvantages there would be for that entity.
What are some of the advantages for those different entities?
So one of the biggest advantages for a small business is to become an LLC, because that has some legal parts that are great for a small business, but also you can apply to the IRS to become treated as what's called a subchapter S corporation, and that gives you some tax advantages. The biggest one is you can put yourself on a small salary and pay in some taxes that way, but on any draws you take out on the profits, you don't have to pay any kind of Social Security tax or self-employment tax, which is a big savings. If you just do an LLC and you file as an LLC, you have to pay self-employment tax, which is Social Security tax, on all of your earnings from the business. So it can have a very distinct advantage for a small business to do a subchapter S corporation.
Okay. Is it ever a good idea for small business owners to do their own taxes?
It's normally not. I'd say the only time it might work would be for a very small business, a business that's maybe just starting out and using a Schedule C on their personal tax return. They might be able to get away with it because it's not very complicated. But there are some great advantages to using a tax accountant, not just to prepare the taxes, but also to have that representation if there is a confrontation that's of some sort with the IRS or even a state or local government regarding tax returns.
So if business owners ever do their own taxes, what are some key things that they should remember?
Well, probably the biggest thing would be not to try to do it without a program. So, you certainly want to get a TurboTax or some kind of a tax program to help you or step you through the process. Some things tax-wise that they need to remember would be office in the home, which is much simpler now. The IRS has a much simpler method that you can choose office in the home instead of going through a whole process of square footage and so forth. Some of the other things would be auto and mileage expenses. A lot of small businesses forget to take their mileage expenses for business, and the cell phone is another one. A lot of small business people forget to deduct a portion of their cell phone expense, which is business related.
Okay. Are there any tax code changes this year that business owners need to be aware of?
So, I've done some research on that, and there's nothing really big that I would say is a change that is already here. There are anticipated changes, based on the Trump administration and what the Trump administration is putting forward as ideas for tax changes.
What are they putting forward?
Well, it mainly would benefit big business and the wealthy. That's the overall current of it. But the idea is to reduce corporate tax rates from 35% down to 15%. which would really change the game. Some of the advantages that I talked to you about of being a subchapter S corporation. Well, if that actually happens, if the rate drops, the highest rate drops to 15% for corporations, it might be more advantageous for a business owner to switch to a regular corporation. So it could have some big effects on the corporate entity that you choose.
What can small business owners do throughout the rest of this year to make filing their taxes a little easier?
And that's a really good question, because this is the right time of year to be looking at the year end. Number one would be to look at your financial reports. I mean, if you don't have financial reports, you need to make sure you put something in place so that you can see that. Right now, you should be looking at least the first 6 months of the year, see how you're doing, see how you're trending, and try to anticipate what it might look like at the end of the year so you can plan for that. So tax planning is the big thing. If it looks like you're going to have a considerable profit, well, maybe now's the time to consider a new employee that you could bring on staff, or a piece of equipment that you could purchase that you could write off this year. There are other things, such as if you don't have a good tax program right now, it's a good time to try to put that in place. Get yourself organized, make sure you're recording all of your income and expenses correctly. One of the biggest mistakes small businesses make initially is they don't keep good records, and they turn over their bank statements to a tax accountant. The tax accountant is going to say all your deposits are income, when in fact in the first year perhaps you're putting some of your own money into the business. That's not income, and so there could be a massive mistake by the accountant if you don't tell them, exactly how much of this is income and how much is a loan from the owner.
Brian Smith, I want to thank you so much for coming on. We're going to be giving tax updates for every show from here throughout the end of the year, so I want to thank you for starting us off. And maybe you can come back on again and give us some more tips.
Well, I would love to, and thank you very much.
All right. And that's our show for today. I want to thank all of my guests, Andrea Evans, Berri Wells, and Brian Smith. This show and previous episodes are posted on our website, diversity.mypgc.us, and click on the Pulse. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram too, at PGC Diversity, and of course, our YouTube channel is The Pulse TV. Come join our Small Business Club for a chance to showcase your business on this show. Send an email with the link to your company website to sddd@co.pg.md.us. Also, if you would like to see your business on this show, it's simple. Take a picture, take a selfie, a picture of you and your business, and it has to be a selfie. So send it to us on Twitter at PGC Diversity, and be sure to use the hashtag #SelfieOnThePulse. I'm Denise Roberts, and remember, in Prince George's County, your success is our success.
See these hands? They grip the wheel of a Humvee in Afghanistan.
These hands? 6 years treating soldiers.
12 years flying choppers.
My hands? They're here for the person who fought in Afghanistan. I made the call and got support for my sister.
My hands are here for the person who treated those soldiers. I helped connect my son with the care he's earned.
Mine take care of the person who flew those helicopters. And if life gets overwhelming, they're ready to dial the Veterans Crisis Line.
The Veterans Crisis Line is here for all veterans and their loved ones. Call 1-800-273-8255 and press 1 or chat online at veteranscrisisline.net.